our eternal rock, and our Redeemer. As Alan read for you just a few moments ago, our story today from the Bible talks about a man named Naaman. And this man had a lot going for him. He was the lead general in the army of Aram. Aram is what we call today Damascus in Syria. He was the head of the entire army, probably second only to the king or maybe one or two advisors. He was one of the top guys in the government. He was famous as a general for his conquests. And so he was a man of great prestige, great honor, great wealth, and great power. But Naaman had a problem. Naaman was a sick man. His body was ailing. He had a disease called leprosy. We're not exactly sure what sort of leprosy he had, but we know that this caused him great pain, discomfort, humiliation. And one day, why don't I read it for you? Chapter 5 in 2 Kings. Now Naaman was the commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now, bands from Aram had gone out and taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him from his leprosy." So we have a girl here from Israel, and she has told Naaman about the prophet Elisha. And she knows that Elisha has the power of God with him, and that he can cure his leprosy. So Naaman, desperate because he knew of no other cure. There was no cure in the world for leprosy. No doctors could get rid of it. And so, desperate to find a cure, Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. The king of Aram said, "By all means, go. I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him talents of silver, 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. He took with him a lot of money. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant David to you, so that you may cure him of leprosy." Could you imagine if somebody knocked on your door and said, "I'm here to be cured of cancer"? "I'm here to be cured of cancer," they said as they knocked on your door. How would you feel? Somebody told me, if I come to your house, you can cure me of my illness. You might feel a little intimidated. You might feel a little angry at the person who said that. You might be curious as to why they said that. But now, imagine that you are the president of a country with a stronger nation right beside you. And the man who has arrived is one of the king's top servants, one of the king's top emissaries. And he says, "My king sends me to you to cure me of my leprosy, to cure me of my cancer, to cure me of the incurable disease, to cure me of AIDS," he says. You would think that maybe this is a trick of some kind. And that's exactly what the king of Israel says. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes in desperation and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me?" Because he knows he can't do it. So when he sends Naaman back uncured, what's going to happen? He'll rally the troops. This guy refuses to cure him. So the king of Israel is desperate. But Elisha, the prophet Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes. He sent this message, "King, why have you torn your robes?" have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him to say, "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." The Jordan River is the main river that runs through Israel. It is considered a special river of God's presence in Israel. And it is symbolic of Israel itself. When the Israelites crossed the Jordan, they entered God's promised land. So crossing the Jordan is a symbol of entering into God's presence. And Elisha is playing on this symbolism as he tells Naaman to go and wash in the Jordan. But Naaman, a foreigner, has no idea what Elisha is implying here. And Naaman responds. Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hands over his head and over the spot, and cure me of the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than any of the waters of Israel? Couldn't I have washed in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and went off in a rage. He didn't understand why Elisha told him to wash in the Jordan. Naaman's servant went to him and said to him, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then he tells you to wash and be clean?" So Naaman went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored, and he became clean like that of a young boy. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in the world except in Israel. Please accept a gift from your servant." He wanted to pay him with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in gold and silver and fine clothing. This is how he wanted to pay him. He says, "Accept this small gift, this token of thanks. Accept it from me for what you have done for me." The prophet answers, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing." And even though Naaman urged him, he still refused. This is a very, very important key aspect of this story, and we're going to come back to it in a minute. Naaman offered him hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Elisha refused, even though Naaman urged him. "If you will not accept these gifts," Naaman said, "please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry, for your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god except the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant of this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Ramon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Ramon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this." And Elisha said, "Go in peace." Naaman had learned a very important lesson that many people today have forgotten. There is only one God. There is only one God, and that God is the God who speaks in this book. Naaman learned that lesson, and he committed that day. Remember I said that entering the Jordan was symbolic of entering God's presence? When Naaman entered the Jordan, he entered into God's presence, and God cleansed him. The only God, the true God, the one and only God of the universe, made him clean, and Naaman realized this, that God can do the impossible. He is the only true God, and he would never again worship on any other God's soil. He said, "This soil, this land belongs to God, and I will worship that God alone forevermore." Now, he was a servant of the king, so he had to go into a foreign temple, a false god, an idol, and he had to support his king. And he asked Elijah for permission to enter into the temple. But he committed to Elijah and said, "When I am in there, I promise that my heart will not be bowing down to this false idol. I only do this to serve my king." He said, "May the Lord please forgive me." And Elijah said, "Go in peace." man named Naaman had traveled some distance. Gehazi. Now Gehazi is Elisha's servant. Gehazi is about to get himself in a lot of trouble. Gehazi saw the gold. He saw the silver. He saw the clothes. And he got greedy. He wanted a little something for himself. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elijah, the man of God, said to himself, "My master was too easy on Naaman." This Aramean, you can hear a bit of disdain in his voice, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. Doesn't that sound noble? He's going to make the man pay for his cleansing. He's going to charge him. He's going to get something from him. The cleansing was free. That's too easy for this foreigner. And he talks himself into this. He talks himself into believing that he's not doing this with selfish motives. He talks himself into believing that he's not doing this for selfish gain. He says, this guy needs to pay for his cleansing. So Gehazi hurried after Naaman. And when Naaman saw him running towards him, he got down from his chariot to meet him. "Is everything all right?" he said. "Everything's all right," Gehazi answered. "My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of the prophets have come. They've just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. So please, give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing." A very modest price to pay to be cured of an incurable disease. And Naaman said, "By all means, take 2 talents." Said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them. Gehazi asked for 1 talent. Naaman said, "We'll take 2. And Gehazi took them. And he tied them up, the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 sets of clothing. And he gave them to 2 of his servants, 2 of Naaman's servants, and they carried them ahead of Gehazi. So Naaman sent 2 of his servants with the money and the clothes. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servants and put them away in his house, and he sent the men away, and they left. Then he went in and stood before his master, Elisha. One piece of advice. If you work for a prophet of God, don't try to pull the wool over his eyes. If you work for God's man, a prophet who talks with God, who receives messages from him, don't try to lie to him. You're only going to make things worse. He stood before his master Elisha. Elisha asked, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "Your servant didn't go anywhere," Gehazi answered. But Elisha said to him, "Was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money or to accept clothes, olive groves, vineyards, flocks, herds, men servants, maidservants? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever." Then Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and he was leprous, as white as snow. The disease that was Naaman now belonged to Gehazi. Gehazi's descendants would forever have somebody who had this disease. When I first read this story years ago, it struck me that this was kind of a harsh punishment. This was kind of a harsh punishment for Gehazi, don't you think? For accepting a few $1,000s from a foreigner, from an idolater who came and received services rendered. And I thought, that seems kind of harsh. But as I studied it over the years, I realized why the punishment is so great. Elisha was creating for all generations, for all people of all times, a picture, an image, a symbol that helps us to understand God's grace. God's grace